expertise, capture their knowledge, put in the knowledge management system, so even after that person leaves the job, people can access his or her knowledge. So that's another advantage of these knowledge management systems. There's one other piece of the knowledge management puzzle that I want to mention. That's setting up electronic communities of practice. How many are familiar with the term communities of practice? Okay, but just think about that term. What does it mean? I mean, people who are doing the same type of job, people with similar jobs, are put into a community, an electronic community, an online community. They're all connected because they're practicing the same sets of skills. And then the community members can easily discuss problems and solutions with each other. So let's say I'm a new professor working at Florida State University, and my students, I don't know how to teach my students a particular skill. Maybe nobody at Florida State knows how to do that either. I can go into a community of practice where there's other assistant professors at other universities and ask of them, what techniques do you use? What problems have you encountered? And they share that information with me. So communities of practice just involves getting people either in the same organization or in different organizations together electronically and setting up a network that enables them to share problems, share solutions with one another. Very good idea, and people in instructional design can often do that to help people do their jobs better. They don't necessarily have to design a new course. Think about how often you might go online and seek information from others. That's what a community of practice is, but it's a formal way of doing it. So this is what knowledge management is all about. Setting up electronic data collection and storage and retrieval systems, setting up communities of practice. And if we go back to the slide I showed you a moment ago, you can see, even back in 2008, almost 80% of the organizations being surveyed, there were over 400 organizations represented in this particular survey, over 80%, almost 80%, 79.8%, said they were using knowledge bases or knowledge management systems to help their people do a better job, and 63%, 62.7%, said they had set up communities of practice so the people in their organization could do a better job. So you can see that this trend is one that's being used a lot today. Same slide, different trend. Electronic performance support. This is trend number 3, performance support. Let me define it and then give you some examples. A performance support system provides performers, workers, with access to tools and information that support performance, and here's the key, at the moment they need it. Access to the necessary tools and information that support their performance, their work, at the moment of need. This is taken from my book, A Chapter by Frank Wynne. Let's see what that means. How many have actually heard this term, performance support? You may not have heard it, but every single one of you, I bet, has used a performance support tool. Let me give you a couple of examples. I'll be surprised if you say, I'm not familiar with it. A GPS system is a performance support tool. You're driving in the car, you're not sure how to get somewhere. You have a task, you have to get someplace. You don't know how to get there. So, a GPS gives you access to an electronic map and verbal instructions that help you perform better to get to the destination when you need it. It's there for you right at the moment you need it, and it gets you to where you want to go. I used to think I was the best navigator in our family, and I could always get us to the right place. But oftentimes I'd get us lost. We'd get lost. Now with the GPS, the electronic performance support tool, we get lost much less frequently. Another good example, I don't know what, you have an income tax, do you have to fill out income tax forms here? Sure. And in America we do. We have a very complex income tax system. It takes a very long time to fill out an income tax form. Many Americans don't even do it themselves. They go to a company like H&R Block and have somebody there do it for them. Well, some bright entrepreneurs came up with TurboTax as one of them, income tax preparation support system. You simply answer a series of questions electronically, and as a result, your income tax form is prepared for you. So this is another example of a tool that supports your performance, enables you to perform a task when you need to perform it. It's an electronic performance support system. This notion of performance support is very important for instructional designers to know about, because when we have people working in the business world, we want them to do a better job. If we can create a performance support system, they'll do the job better, and they won't even necessarily have to go through a long course of instruction. So let me give you a third example that really demonstrates this. I like what I'm talking about so much that I get all choked up. And again, I notice I'm starting to talk a little faster, so I hope you're keeping up with me. Tools for generating an instructional objective. Let me describe to you a real-world situation where my colleagues and I at Florida State created a performance support tool. About 10 years ago, in the crediting agency, an agency that comes around, and you have this too. As a matter of fact, today, you have some people here today to look at the processes you're using, so the dean is doing it. Isn't that right? Yeah. We have that at Florida State too. Every 5 or 10 years, an accrediting agency comes through and says, we want to make sure Florida State's doing a good job of training their students, teaching their students. So 10 years ago, they came through and they said, we want the objectives from every single course in your university. Every single instructor needs to give us their objectives. Well, some instructors write objectives. Other instructors, they teach, but they never have any objectives. Or they at least don't have them written down. So we had a problem. How can we teach 1,500 instructors how to write objectives? Should we take them in and have them take a 5-hour course or a 3-hour course on writing objectives and then have to give them feedback when we said that's going to be very inefficient. So instead, we created an electronic tool. I shouldn't say we really, it's one of my colleagues, Dr. Walter Wager, who created this tool. And it looked like this. This is just one screen capture. The faculty were given about a half-an-hour workshop on how to use this tool to create objectives for them. So the tool, a screen would come up, and the first part of the objective would already be written for them. Upon completion of this course, the student will be able to. What the instructor had to do on this screen is first figure out which of these verbs best describes the behavior he or she wants the students to attain. Now, this, by the way, are the 6 levels of Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. You may or may not know about that, and you don't even have to know about it. I mean, we pointed it out to the instructors, but they didn't even have to understand that. All they had to really do was select a verb. So maybe they would say compute, or maybe they'd say describe, or formulate. But they click one of these boxes, and then another screen would come up, and they had to write the second part of the objective, the conditions, and then another part of the objective, the standards. And within 15 minutes or so, they were able to use this tool to create a series of objectives that they could then give to the accrediting agency. So by using an electronic performance support tool, we were able to solve a problem that didn't require instruction. We created a tool that gave professors access we gave them a tool that enabled them to support their performance, to create the objectives when they needed to do so. Very good example. And for the past 15 years or so, one of the elective courses we offer at Florida State in our instructional design program is how to create performance support tools. So our students know how to do that, and when they're going looking for a job, they can say to an employer, not only can I design instruction for you, but I can design a performance support tool to help people learn when they need to learn. So this is a skill that I think is important for instructional designers to have. Trend number 3. Will performance support continue to be important in the future? Here's a survey that was done in 2010. They asked the people in ASTD, how likely are you to be doing the following things over the next 5 years? The very top item that got the highest percentage of agreement, almost 89%, was this one. There'll be a greater emphasis in my organization to support learning at the moment of need, creating an electronic performance support system. Let's see what's going on over here. Can I help you? Oh, the break. Okay, I'm taking longer than I should. Do I need?
We have to tell you that we have one break.
Okay.
It should be stop for wine and take a break or.
That's fine. Let me just finish up this one trend and we'll take a break. Is that okay? I normally go through this much faster, so you'll apologize. I have to apologize, but I thought because of the language problems, it's better to go a little slow. So let me just finish this trend number 3, and then we'll take a break. And I promise the next trends will go more quickly, okay? Or if you don't want to hear about the remaining trends, we'll just go have a party and forget about them. Don't all of you shake your heads in agreement, okay? All right, so just to prove that performance support is important, 89% of instructional designers in 2010, when they were asked to say which things are they likely to be doing over the next 5 years, the most one that they agreed with was creating performance support systems. Okay, so I talked about 3 trends. We have 7 to go. I'll spend less time on them. Let's take a break, and hopefully you'll all come back and not sneak out. Thank you. We'll take a break now. So it's hard to just get just right, but I'm trying my best. Okay? Okay, so we've talked about 3 trends. I want to talk about online learning. How many are familiar with the term online learning? I think almost everybody's heard of it. Matter of fact, I call online learning the gorilla of trends. It's the biggest trend that affects our field, I think, is online learning. Let me show you some data. First, let me say this. There's been growing use of online learning, not only in higher education, but in many sectors. And I think this growth is likely to continue for many years to come. So it's important for us to learn about how to design good online courses. Let's look at the data. First, let's look at the data in business and industry. This report was just published last October 2012, again, from American Society for Training and Development. They do a survey, and here's what the results of this particular survey show. Among leading training organizations, these are business and industry where they have instructional designers working for them, the percentage of online training has greatly increased. Look at this data. These are about the 30 to 40 best training organizations in America. And look at how the data has changed. Back in 2005, they asked them, what percentage of training in your organization is delivered by a live instructor, someone like Reiser getting up in front of the class and talking to them? And they said about 60% is delivered by somebody like Reiser, and back in 2005, only about 25% online. Look how those percentages have changed. That by 2011, only 48% was being delivered by an instructor. 38% online. From 25% to 38% in about a 7-year period. That's almost a 50% increase in online training, online instruction. What does that say? That says if you're going to work in business and industry, you need to know how to design good online instruction. That's just in business and industry, working for companies. Look at higher education in the United States. Here's a 2012 survey. This company, Babson, surveyed administrators at more than 2,500 colleges and universities in the United States. And they asked them, what percentage of your students, of all the students in your university, what percentage of them are taking at least one online course each year? So the slide I'm going to show, the picture I'm going to show you now, the graph I'm going to show you, is going to show you what percentage of students in over 2,500 universities in the United States are taking at least one online course each year. Look at how those numbers have increased. When they asked administrators in 2002, on average, only about 10% of all college students in the United States were taking at least one course online. 10%. Look at how those numbers continue to go up. Fall 2011, over 30% of college students in America are taking at least one online course each year. Triple. triple what it was just 10 years earlier. Tremendous increase. It's so obvious. Even in middle schools and high schools, secondary education. In the United States, secondary education is grades 6 through 12. So they asked teachers, Blackboard is a large learning management system company in America. Blackboard did a survey of teachers in the United States in 2011. And they asked the teachers, school administrators, how many students in your school are taking at least one online course a year. So this is middle and high school students, secondary school students. They asked the administrators, what percentage of your students are taking online courses? I would have guessed almost no one. I didn't think that students in secondary school are taking online courses, but the results fooled me. In middle schools, in 2008, about 9% of all middle school students were taking at least one online course each year. 9% of students in grades 6 through 8. By 2010, the number had more than doubled to 19%. Doubling in just 2 years. High schools, it's even more dramatic. In 2008, administrators in high schools in America said about 10% of their students were taking at least one online course per year. In just 2 years, the number had tripled to 30%. So let's just think about the 3 slides that we just looked at. In business and industry, the number of online courses increased a lot. Higher education increased a lot. K-12, 6 through 12 in education increased a lot. Increasing use of online instruction. More online courses present more opportunities for us, those of us who are instructional designers, or those of us in the field of instructional design and technology. Think about why. Why do more online courses have more opportunities for us? Normally, I don't give out the slides in advance. The answer's right there. The reason is, in my opinion, instructional design skills are necessary in order to prepare effective online courses. When we create an online course, it's not simply a matter of taking instructor notes and putting them online and having the students read the instructor notes or the textbook online. We have to create interesting activities where students can interact with one another, get feedback from one another, get feedback from the instructor. So you have to create an interesting environment. It's harder to teach online because it isn't where you can adjust things as you can in the classroom. Who can do that? Instructional designers can do that. We need instructional designers to make interesting and effective online courses. I know this is true for a couple of reasons. At Florida State, whereas 5 years ago, very few of our students were hired to design online courses. Now, quite a few are. Matter of fact, when I taught my first online course, which was about 8 or 9 years ago, one of my former students was hired to help me, because he had more experience on it, to help me design it effectively. So, online instruction, if it's going to be good, needs instructional designers. Okay, so let me go back just one moment here. So, hopefully, you as an instructional designer, as somebody in the field of instructional design and technology, are learning about, or will learn about, how to design online courses so as to increase the likelihood that you can design a good course online for whatever organization you're working for. And we have several courses in Florida State that deal with online instruction, how to make online instruction effective. The 5th trend I want to talk about is what we call informal learning. This man, Jay Cross, is considered to be one of the experts. He had a book called Informal Learning. He says informal learning is the unofficial, unscheduled, impromptu way people learn to do their jobs. In my book, a woman from San Diego State, Allison Rossett, defines it pretty much the same way, but she uses simpler terms. Learning other than that which takes place in a classroom or other formal instructional settings. You're going to learn a lot about the field of instructional design and technology in this program. But when you go out in the real world, you're going to learn even more. I learned a lot of things when I was a student, and it was through formal coursework. But once you get out into the real world to do it, you learn even more, and you do it in an informal way. Let's take a look at the difference between formal and informal learning. This is a very interesting slide. Jay Cross developed it. He contrasts the difference between formal and informal. He says both of these are important. There are some things that are best taught in courses or in workshops, so we need to continue to do this. But he says other things can be taught informally, trying to promote conversations between people, such as through a community of practice, or trying to have information available at your fingertips, such as your electronic performance support system. That's the difference between formal, one difference between formal and informal. But here's some other interesting ones. When you're in a formal situation, who determines what's to be taught? The instructor does. The instructor does. It's instructor-driven. I'm standing here now, driving the instruction. I determine what I want to cover, what I want to share with you. When you're involved with informal learning, it's you who's taking the lead. You're deciding what you want to look for, who you want to talk to, where you're going to go for information. So it's two very different approaches. One is the instruction is delivered by the driven by the instructor, and we certainly need that. Some people have to learn certain skills in a particular area, and oftentimes the instructor can best provide that. But other times, people should take the lead and decide what their needs are and try to get the answers. And it's easier to get the answers nowadays because of all the tools we have, electronic tools we have to get that information. Here's one final difference. When we're in a formal situation, it's a push culture. I'm pushing the information at you. I'm saying, here's information, take this, you'll need it. I'm pushing it to you. Some of you are saying, thank you, I want it. Others are saying, go away, I don't want it, go away. As opposed to informal learning, you're trying to pull the information. You want the information, you need it, you're more accepting of it. So, as an instructional designer, we need to think about, is it best for our learners to be taught in a formal manner? And I think oftentimes the answer is yes. But in other situations, maybe we don't want to give them formal instruction. Instead, we can say, let's set up an environment where it's easier for them to get the information they want when they want it. Let's set up a community of practice so when they're ready to do it, they can talk to someone else in the community and get an answer. Let's set up performance support tools so that when someone needs information, they can get it when they need it, not when we decide to give it to them. I'm going to give you one example of this. When I first graduated college, I worked for a government agency in America, the Social Security Administration, to give benefits to people who were retired. I started out that work taking a 2-week workshop where they went through these 5 gigantic books about all the things you need to know to work in that agency. 90% of that information I was not going to need. So they were pushing lots of information at me and taking 2 weeks to do it. Wouldn't it have been better to just give me 1 or 2 days of information, and then when I needed the information, going informally and getting it, it would have been so much more efficient. So much more efficient. And I wouldn't have been as turned off by starting working and getting all this information I was never going to use or rarely use. So they focused so much on the formal that they ignored the informal, and it resulted in very inefficient instruction. So as an instructional designer, you need to think about what do we need to cover formally through courses and workshops? What can we cover informally by setting up performance support tools, knowledge management systems, communities of practice? People will learn better and be less resistant if you give them the opportunity to learn things when they need it, rather than pushing things at them when you feel it's necessary for them to get it. Room for both, but let's give a little more emphasis to this than we normally do. Here are some of the means we can use to support informal learning. Some of them are complex, take a lot of work, like designing a knowledge management system or setting up a community of practice. But some of them are very easy for you to do if you're working for an organization. Starting an organizational newsletter, an electronic one, coming up with FAQs, encouraging employees to blog and share their blogs with one another. These are things you can do in an organization to help support informal learning. And by doing so, hopefully, the people in that organization will learn more and do their jobs better, and they won't have to sit in the classroom all the time. Imagine if you had to sit in the classroom for 2 weeks listening to me lecture. You'd all quit your jobs, right? So let's make less formal more informal. Is informal learning being used today in corporations in America? The last survey I could find was in 2008, so it's about 5 years ago, but again, it was from ASTD, and here's what the results indicated. They asked leaders of over 400 major organizations, business industries in America, generally speaking, to what extent is informal learning occurring in your organization? 34% said it was being used to a moderate extent. Another 34% to a high extent, 7% to a very high extent. So 41% were saying that a lot of learning in our organization is taking place informally. And I bet 5 years later, with all the new tools we have, all the social media we have, mobile devices we have, these percentages have gone up. So informal learning is an important tool. Here, this slide, again taken from that, shows some of the means of informal learning that the companies are using. For example, 52% of the organization said they'd set up internal fingertip knowledge systems, sort of like Google, to help people learn. Let's see what else. Intranets set up in 65% of the organizations. Communities of practice, 20%. These are some of the informal learning techniques that these organizations in 2008, 5 years ago, when technology wasn't nearly as good as it is today, were saying they were using. Trend number 6. This one, how many have heard of social media? Come on, I think you all have heard of social media. Excuse me? This is why I don't make it interactive. Yes, right, sure, right. Web tools, just like we said, next slide, sure. But they're web-based tools that enable everyone, not just the instructor or the instruction designer, but everyone to create content and share it and to collaborate with others. When the web first came along, it was the educators, the experts who were presenting things on the web. Now, think about it. Everybody can put things up on the web. You know how to solve a problem. I have a bad ankle. I went online, I found thousands of YouTube videos and different types of content. There's a learning group to help people who have ankle problems solve their problems. So anybody can do it. Information is going up on the web all the time. We need to make it easy so anyone can post the information. We need to make it easy for our workers, our learners, to acquire the information that's up there and make sure which information is good, which one is bad. And as our student here pointed out, these are some of these social media tools that we can use. Wikis and blogs, podcasts, YouTube, all of these, anyone can put the knowledge up there. And when we work for an organization, we want to take advantage of these things and not design instruction. We don't want to design instruction on how somebody can treat a bad ankle if it's already available to them easily by one of these tools. What extent are social media being used in education and training? 2010 survey asking people and businesses to what extent they're using social media to support training in your organization. 42% of the organizations said they use shared workspaces, things like Google Docs, to help workers work with one another via this tool to help create solutions to performance problems. 20% said they use social networking to help people do their job better, not just socialize, but to do their job better. Wikis, another 20%, 19%, and so on. So we see, and this is even back 3 years ago, organizations, business organizations, using social media to help their employees do a better job. But it's true in classrooms too. There was a survey done in 2009 asking teachers in grades K through 12, how often do you use social media to help your students learn in the classroom? So we're looking at the bottom line, the kind of yellow or green line. 20% of the teachers in elementary schools and secondary schools in America said they were using YouTube to help students learn in their classroom. This is 4 years ago. Blogs, about 15%. Wikis, about 15%. So not only in business and industry, but in K-12 schools, people using social media. colleges and universities. 2010 survey done by Pearson, the big publishing company. They asked professors, do you ask your students to read or view various social media devices or tools, like such as things on YouTube, look at blogs and wikis? 40% said they did. And 20% said they actually asked their students as part of their assignments in class to create things like a YouTube video or start a wiki or do their own blog. So you can see in higher education, people are using social media as well. So social media are being used more and more frequently to help people learn, help perform their jobs, do their jobs better. You as an instructional designer need to be aware of this and think about how can I use social media to help improve learning in my organization. Trend number 7, educational games. I enjoy this one a lot. Here's a quote from my book. In recent years, there's been an increasing interest in using video and computer-based games in order to facilitate learning in schools and the workplace. And right at Florida State, one of my colleagues, Valerie Schutz, has created a game called Newton's Playground. In America, we're trying to teach our middle school students physics concepts. And it's hard to teach them, it's very abstract. So she's created a game which presents students with problems where they have to get a ball to go through a maze so that it comes and hits a balloon. So the students have to figure out, how can I get this ball, which is over here, up to this balloon, which is over here, and go through a maze. And they have to use various things like pulleys and levers to do it. It's a game. But the purpose of the game isn't just for the children to have fun, it's to teach them basic physics processing. Val sent me a video that showed this in action, but I couldn't get it to run on my computer, so I can't show it to you. But it's an example of a game that teaches students important skills. And we see more and more frequently people using educational games to help students learn. In 2010, ASTD asked people in business and training departments, what new tools are you developing to support learning? 32% said we're using serious games in our organization to help people learn. That's one of the new tools that was very popular. 32% said they were using it. When we use games, we have to be careful though, because people like games a lot, they enjoy games, but do the games really help our learners learn? There's a very famous journal, most likely the most respected journal for research in America, Review of Educational Research. And just last year, 2 famous researchers looked at hundreds and hundreds of studies that examined whether or not games help people learn. And here's what they said as a conclusion. It's been widely noted that the enthusiasm for using games, the excitement about using games, outstrips, meaning is way ahead of, the available evidence for transfer to external tasks. What they're saying here is people are very excited about using games to help students learn. But oftentimes, these games aren't very effective. They don't really help people learn. So if we're going to be instructional designers, we have to be careful about the kinds of games we develop to make sure they really help people learn. And I have a challenge for designers about this. How can we design games that will facilitate the transfer of skills from the game environment to real-world tasks? One of our guests in the audience today works for the Naval Training School here in in Thailand. I just was at a conference in Singapore with a military conference. A challenge will be, okay, we have some naval cadets, we want to teach them a particular skill. Maybe it's how to steer a ship away from some dangerous reef or something. How can we design a game that does that? We want to make it interesting, but we also have to have them acquire the skills. I think a key idea is that whatever skill we want them to learn in the real world needs to be directly matched in the game. So we don't want them doing something that's unrelated to the game. We want them in the game to do the same sort of thing that they have to do in the real world. It's kind of like creating a simulation in a computer-based environment. So I think it's very challenging for us to design games that not only are fun, but will help people acquire skills. I challenge you to go out and look at some educational games today. Many of them will say we've developed this game to help them learn such and such. I found out in many cases it doesn't really help people learn the skills. So we need to be careful how we design these games. Trend number 8. We're almost done. Okay? Hang in there for a few more minutes. Trend number 8. Constructivism. How many have heard of constructivism? Okay. Boy, we've heard about a lot of things. Why don't you come up here and do the lecture? Come on. No? Okay. Are you a student in the program? You're a professor. You deserve to be one because you know so much. That's good. Okay. Trend number 8, constructivism. This is a theory of teaching and learning. And there are a lot of aspects to this theory, but I just highlighted 3 of them here for you. The constructivists feel that people will learn best and be able to transfer what they learn the best when they're presented with very complex problems that are like the problems they have to face in the real world. So if you're in a math class, instead of giving people a problem like a train is going 10 miles an hour and you need to get someplace in 6 hours, how many hours will it take? You need to get someplace that's 60 miles away, how many hours? That's a very unrealistic problem. They're saying create very complex real-world problems, then require the learners to figure out how to solve the problem. Don't give them too much help in solve. By the way, this slide is a little different than what I had on the slide sheet here. I changed the wording just last night. Let the learners take the lead in solving the problem. The constructors say, if you, the instructor, tell them exactly what to do, they're not really going to learn. Let them figure it out for themselves, and they're more likely to learn the skill. And then they say, also, learners learn best when they work with one another. So let them work in teams. So these are 3 of the key ideas of constructivism. There's at least 3 others, but I give them complex problems, let them figure it out for themselves without you, the instructor, giving them too much help, and have the learners work together to solve the problems. This is an interesting idea. And over the past 2 decades, there's been increasing use on creating learning environments or instructional situations for students that incorporate these ideas. So people, a number of people are excited about this because they think this will help students learn things in a more full, deep fashion than if we simply tell them what to do. I'm not sure I really agree with all of this, and I'll explain why in a moment. I see some problems with some of these ideas. So, but this idea has become more and more popular in the past 2 decades. As a matter of fact, there's a new field called the learning sciences that's only been around for maybe 10 years. And the learning sciences use the principles I just showed you a few moments ago to create very complex learning environments. It's a field of study that focuses on the design of learner-centered approaches to teaching and learning that incorporate many of the same principles as those advocated by constructivists. In other words, the learning scientists are creating situations where learners go into a learning activity and they're given a complex problem to solve. The instructor kind of stands back and says, I want you to get into teams and figure this out for yourself. And then the learners need to figure out how to solve the problem. Think about that for a minute. There's some advantages to that, but think about what might be a disadvantage. You're in a class, let's say it's a geometry class. You've had some previous classes in mathematics, and now the first day of class, instead of the instructor coming in and saying, here's how you solve this type of geometry problem, instead they present you with a problem and ask you to figure it out for yourself. But they say, get in teams so you can help one another. There's some advantages to that, but what might be one disadvantage? This is going to be an interactive portion of the session. Let's think about 1 or 2 disadvantages to that approach. What might be a disadvantage of that? Somebody raise their hand. I'm looking for... Anyone who raises their hand automatically becomes a professor. Would you like that? Okay. Somebody volunteer. What's a disadvantage of something like this? Why would it be hard for you to learn in an environment like that? I see somebody about ready to raise their hand. Do you want to share with us your idea? Here's the microphone.
The disadvantage of the constructivism, I think we as a teacher uh, we get used to the old-fashioned lecture. We should teach that the way we are. But when we have to apply the new things or the new ways, we have to push our efforts very hard to encourage learners to do other stuff themselves.
And to tell them how to do it.
So we're counting, very good, thank you. We're counting on the learners to figure it out themselves, but sometimes the learners can't figure it out themselves. So the instructor needs to be there to help them. I can tell you, you take the lead and solve it. But if I see you working together and you're going in the wrong direction, it's going to be very inefficient if I just keep on saying, okay, keep on trying, I need to give